With the Flash movie being right around the corner, now feels like the perfect time to recap the 4 key movies that are relevant to the Flash: Batman '89, Batman Returns, Batman v Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Why? It's so me and you, the viewers, can remember where Michael Keaton's Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman, and Ezra Miller's Flash left off before the upcoming Flash movie. It's also so people can save time and not have to sit through several hours worth of movies just to be prepared for the Flash. There's a lot of ground to cover, so bear with me, because as the CW's Flash Show has said a multitude of times before Barry Allen did something insanely cool, it's time to run. So run with me, viewers, run. Here's everything you need to know before DC's The Flash. For those that have never watched Batman '89, there are a few important things you need to know. Batman '89 is the movie that influenced almost every piece of Batman media we have today. It was so popular and influential that it's fair to say without its massive success, we wouldn't have gotten Batman the Animated Series. Batman '89 established a crime-filled Gotham City we've all come to know and love. Batman '89 established a visual gothic aesthetic we tend to associate with Gotham City and Batman in general. Batman '89 also established the darker tones that most people want out of Batman movies today. Collectively, these things allow Batman '89 to have various parts of its story told without the movie's script and dialogue needing to tell you anything. You're able to make your own takeaways and understandings just from the visual cues, musical moments, or even key lighting moments such as Bruce Wayne finally becoming Batman at the very end of the movie. In reality, this made Batman '89 a movie that can tell a fairly straight story while allowing it to have a ton of depth across the board. It's a 2-hour-long movie that essentially showcases the game of cat and mouse between the Joker and Batman that we're all very familiar with as Batman fans. Batman made the Joker after a confrontation at a factory that ends with Jack Napier, played by Jack Nicholson, falling into a pit of acid. As revenge, Joker becomes this careless monster who consistently wreaks havoc across all of Gotham City in an attempt to bait Batman out so they could finally fight each other, which inevitably ends with Bruce becoming Batman, the hero that Gotham City needs and deserves. To his credit, you get to see this internal change within Bruce Wayne as the movie progresses because Michael Keaton displays an amazing Bruce Wayne and an amazing Batman. As a protagonist with 2 separate identities, there's never really a moment where Bruce Wayne and Batman feel like the same person, at least until the very end of Batman '89. Bruce Wayne is a rich playboy who's emotionally struggling for the majority of the movie. He very much feels human, and it's because the death of his parents still weighs on him all those years later, which is actually mentioned in the Flash's trailer. Bruce is struggling so much with his trauma in this movie, though not nearly as much as he struggles in Batman Forever, that it plays a role in his relationship with Vicki Vale. As expected, Bruce is terrible at expressing his thoughts or emotions in this first movie. He doesn't know how to communicate the things he wants to communicate, but what is certain is that he absolutely loves Vicki Vale, and Vicki Vale simply wants to be there for him in any way possible, even if she kind of never fully understands him. The problem, though, is that his second persona gets in the way of allowing Bruce to be happy with Vicki. That other half, of course, is a much darker entity that allows Bruce to escape from his internal mourning and emotional struggles. As dark as it is to say this, Bruce needs to be Batman. Being Batman allows Bruce to escape his internal grief and look over the same city that essentially ruined his life, despite, you know, being a billionaire. It also allows Bruce to almost cope with the idea that he's protecting the city when the people need him the most, unlike when he needed someone the night his parents died. However, it's not until a nearly unstoppable force meets an immovable object that forces Bruce to understand that these personas can't be separated if he's doing what's best for Gotham City. They have to become one, and when they become one, Bruce can be Batman the hero, not Batman the vigilante. All of this is thanks to the Joker, who threatens the life of Vicki Vale and nearly destroys all of Gotham in the final act of Batman '89. He also has a scene where he's listening to really loud music as he and his henchmen destroy a ton of art in an art museum, but I digress. Jack Nicholson's Joker is exactly what we all want out of a Joker. If you've never seen Batman 89, it's incredibly easy to see the influence and inspiration that Heath Ledger found from Nicholson. This is the type of villain that knows no boundaries. He's unstable, absurd, and if you don't get the point by now, clinically out of control. No amount of talking could have saved Jack Napier from becoming this ruthlessly powerful, careless, and ultimately chaotic villain. That pool of acid that Jack fell in essentially enabled the inner darkness within him, just like being Batman enables Bruce's inner wish of being able to feel free from his struggles every now and then. The only difference is that this darkness within him allowed him to no longer care. He was free from any and every moral. Being the Joker allowed Jack to not care about the number of people he killed. It allowed Jack to not care about the damage he caused to Gotham either. Ultimately, it allowed Jack to be this dark force that only served one purpose: ruining Batman's life for the sake of revenge. That was his one and only goal throughout all of Batman 89. Joker only cared about forcing Batman into positions where he had to make sacrifices or rough decisions, which is why he eventually steals Vicky Vale from Bruce. He only used her as bait to force Batman into the position of having to either save Vicky or kill him. Fun fact, that's where the "you wanna get nuts? Let's get nuts" line in the Flash trailer comes from. The moment Joker takes Vicky away, Bruce becomes almost irrational because of his emotions at the very moment and tries to fight Joker without his batsuit, and that leads to him saying that iconic line. While the carelessness within Joker leads to a multitude of funny and iconic moments throughout the movie, it leads to the final showdown between him and Batman in a bell tower. After so much build-up and anticipation, Batman and Joker finally face off with each other after Bruce realizes that he has to sacrifice his personal life and needs to be the best hero possible. Things do get intense. I mean, Bruce literally makes Joker bleed in this fight, and it leads to a near-death experience for all three people involved: Vicky Vale, Bruce Wayne, and of course, the Joker. Bruce lays everything on the line to save Vicky Vale, and while Joker thinks he finally got what he wished after all this time, which is the near death of the Batman, he falls into his own. Bruce finally becomes a hero, the reign of crime in Gotham comes to an end, Vicky Vale gets to ride off into the sunset with Alfred, and the movie finishes through Batman with the sight of the iconic bat signal for when the people of Gotham need him most. Batman Returns was released 3 years after Batman 89 in 1992 and is a direct sequel to Batman 89. However, in Tim Burton's cinematic Batman universe, this movie takes place 33 years after the events of Batman 89. And guess what? It's Christmas time in Gotham City. Before we get started, it is worth noting that the batsuit worn by Bruce in this movie is the same suit we've seen the second Barry Allen wearing in the Flash trailers or stills. Now, as much as I love this movie, I'm going to have to admit that Batman Returns is a bit of a mixed bag. This sequel introduces the iconic iterations of the Penguin, played by Danny DeVito, and Catwoman, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, but there are two major problems with this movie. Firstly, Batman Returns makes a massive tonal pivot from Batman 89. In comparison to its predecessor, this movie is nowhere near as serious as I wish it was. Yes, there's a lot of tragedy in this movie, which we'll get into when we specifically talk about the Penguin and Catwoman. However, the serious and/or tragic moments that are supposed to have a meaning and an impact are ruined by creative decisions that are mostly over the top and very comedic. This made Batman Returns a campy superhero movie, as some may call it. Secondly, Batman Returns isn't a very focused movie, and you begin to feel it as you make your way through because there's a noticeable lack of Batman for the first half of it. There's so much time dedicated to introducing multiple characters and their various origin stories and intentions that the movie almost has to put Batman on the back burner. If you watch this movie immediately after watching Batman 89, you're going to get bored. I say that as a person who adores these movies. That's not to say this makes Batman Returns an awful movie, but despite some incredibly memorable moments and two iconic iterations of beloved characters, I think it's fair to say that the first half of this movie is incredibly boring, and that Batman Returns is a fairly disappointing sequel as well. That could be a bit unfair considering Batman 89 is so focused and so well crafted, but Batman Returns simply doesn't ever meet the bar that was left by Batman 89. In regard to the plot of Batman Returns, there really isn't much that you need to take away from this film if I'm being honest. To give you a summary, Max Shreck, a character specifically made up for Batman Returns who's played by Christopher Walken, wants to build a power plant in Gotham despite analysts saying that he shouldn't do so. In the eyes of the public, Max Shreck is basically Santa Claus, and everyone thinks he's some amazing, lovable guy, but that couldn't be further from the truth. As Max is about to give his annual Christmas speech in front of Gotham, things go south quickly. Firstly, his assistant, Selina Kyle, forgot to give him his notes for his speech, and secondly, a bunch of thugs come out of nowhere to soil his event. Of course, this naturally brings us the return of Batman, who's been sitting and waiting for that bat signal to finally light back up. After Batman finally saves the day, Max Shreck gets kidnapped by an infamous figure who's spoken about within Gotham, the Penguin. The Penguin has a tragic backstory as mentioned earlier. He was born with health defects that made his parents give him up. No, literally, they let him flow down a river as a baby. This led to the Penguin being taken in by, and I wish I was joking, a bunch of penguins. He's lived his entire life within the sewers and he kidnapped Max Shreck with one goal in mind, wanting to ascend to the top and live above ground. This forms an unlikely alliance between the two. Max Shreck goes on to kill Selina Kyle for messing up, she gets revived by a bunch of cats, and then she becomes, you guessed it, Catwoman, an entirely different persona from Selina Kyle. Selina was more of a nervous wreck, while Catwoman is far more wild and confident than Selina ever was. Eventually, Bruce and Selina meet at Max Shreck's office, which creates an entirely different side plot of Bruce finding yet another love interest. Penguin finally ascends to the top and decides it's a great idea to play the people of Gotham by getting everyone to buy into his tragic backstory. This allowed him to become the city's sweetheart. Meanwhile, Max tries to use Penguin to distract everybody from his original plans of building a power plant, leading to chaos breaking out in Gotham. Catwoman seeks revenge on Max Shreck, and Bruce tries to balance his newfound interest in Selina while trying to take down the Penguin, who he's been suspicious of since he saw him on television. Every plotline ultimately comes together after Catwoman, Penguin, and Batman finally meet each other. Like most villains do, Penguin and Catwoman temporarily team up only for that to break off almost immediately because Catwoman isn't interested in Penguin at all. This angers Penguin since he's incredibly thirsty throughout all of the movie, but I digress. Thanks to Bruce's detective work, Penguin finally gets outed as a terrible person who is manipulating the people of Gotham City in front of the people of Gotham. The public reception immediately turns against Penguin, who runs back home to his sewer headquarters where he rants about no longer wanting to be called his birth name or be called a human. Shreck ends up holding a massive ball where every main character is present. Max, Catwoman, and Bruce are all there, having a peaceful time, but Selina reveals her true intentions to Bruce. She wants to kill Max Shreck. Before Bruce can really process this, Penguin crashes the ball, kidnaps Max Shreck one final time, and launches an army of penguins with rockets on their backs in one final attempt to take down Gotham City. This plan fails thanks to Bat Tech that Bruce uses to jam the penguins' frequencies, and Penguin ultimately dies in the final showdown between him and Batman. As for Catwoman, she too makes a final appearance in this showdown and gets revenge on Max Shreck as she uses her final life to fulfill her end goal. The movie ends with Bruce once again alone with Alfred in his car. On the way back to Wayne Manor, Bruce sees a stray cat that reminds him of Selina, and he takes that cat in as they drive off, wishing us a very Merry Christmas. While Batman Returns is an enjoyable movie that's almost designed to specifically be enjoyed during the holiday season as a movie you put on in the background, the lack of focus and a massive amount of camp in this movie doesn't really allow the viewer to take anything major away from it. The only highlight, to me, is the simple fact that Bruce finally saw himself in somebody else, only for him to tragically lose her, just like he eventually lost his relationship with Vicky Vale. It almost felt like the world was trying to tell Bruce that he has to be alone for him to be the best Batman possible, which is needed for the sake of Gotham. Honestly, that's a small bit of information that Batman speaks on in the Flash trailer when he talks to Barry about his life story. Plus, it's capitalized on by Bruce ending on an emotional note in this movie, considering he took in the cat just because of the impact Selina had on him. On the other hand, with Penguin, there is a fairly great discussion generated in this movie about how people treat each other, and how people simply want to be accepted, but that gets tossed away for the sake of this movie's campiness. Penguin's betrayal of the people of Gotham makes you go from, you know, he does have a point, to the Penguin actually kind of sucks real quick. Finally, that leaves us with Selina, who probably has the second best arc in this movie. From being belittled to sacrificing herself for the sake of a more than deserved revenge plotline makes a ton of sense for her character, and within the context of Batman Returns. Is the revival by Cats a bit much? Absolutely. Is her killing off Max done in the most over-the-top way possible? Absolutely. However, her character probably displays the perfect amount of camp and seriousness that I wish the rest of the movie had. Regardless though, Batman Returns is still a fun movie once you get past all of the massive amounts of setup. Come on, how can you not love a superhero movie that takes place specifically during Christmas time? Plenty of people have a soft spot for that concept alone. It's time though to jump forward into the timeline. It's time we talk about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. After the events of Man of Steel, which kicked off the entire slate of DCEU movies, we're finally introduced to Ben Affleck's Batman in Batman v Superman. For the rest of this video though, I'm simply going to call Ben Affleck's Batman Batfleck. Unfortunately, when it comes to Batman v Superman, well, it's a very long movie. With a runtime of 3 hours and 3 minutes, BVS tells a multitude of stories within one movie, and that's honestly its biggest flaw. There's simply too much going on to the point where nearly any sort of interest you have throughout this movie begins to disappear the more the movie progresses. Just to give you an idea, this movie balances showing and telling the viewer the following things: introducing a darker Batman that's filled with rage, showcasing Superman's anger towards how Batfleck handles the thugs of Gotham, introducing Wonder Woman and the entire Justice League roster in tiny bits of footage, and an entire Doomsday/Death of Superman arc in the final 40 minutes of the movie. It's a lot, which is why I'm not gonna bother trying to break all of that down for you in this specific video. We're here to talk about what's relevant for The Flash. BVS gives our introduction to the DC Cinematic Universe's The Flash, played by Ezra Miller, who is the star of the upcoming movie. In BVS, we don't really get much about Barry's origin story. What we know though is that Barry Allen is presumed to just be using his powers for super basic things like him using super speed in a convenience store, which, yes, was caught on camera. What future Barry does though is travel to what is the current present time during Batman v Superman to try to warn Bruce that he was right. Everything he ever assumed about what could potentially happen with Superman in the long run was right. Without context, that sounds random, but throughout all of Batman v Superman, Batfleck consistently pushes the narrative and perspective that everybody needs to be cautious of Superman. Even if there's a 1% chance that he could be an enemy to the world, people need to consider taking that seriously. In a dream, this exact assumption comes true as the future is revealed to Bruce. That future doesn't look good at all, thanks to Superman going berserk after the death of Lois Lane, which was supposedly Batfleck's fault one way or another. This future timeline was known as the Nightmare, and is also teased in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which we'll be getting to shortly. I will say though, you have no reason to worry about that timeline ever happening because DC Studios will likely never cover this outcome since it was a part of Zack Snyder's original vision. Now, as for Batfleck, he's easily the most polarizing live-action Batman to date. Batfleck is incredibly dark and filled with anger to the point where he brands thugs in Gotham with his Batarang and he uses a gun, which pisses off a lot of people, including me. The reason why I enjoy Batfleck in this movie is because of his arc. Batfleck's anger doesn't come from an unjustified place. From the very start of this movie, two simple things about Batfleck are thrown at the viewer. Firstly, this iteration of Batman is still very much struggling with his trauma. And secondly, Superman bringing mass destruction to Metropolis pisses Bruce Wayne and the rest of the world off like no other. For what it's worth, I think Bruce is entirely right in feeling that way, just like I feel like he's right about taking Superman being a potential threat as seriously as possible. The way the world views anything going forward was changed the very moment Superman decided to be careless with how he handled the multiple people he was fighting in Man of Steel. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem considering we don't get to see the immediate fallout after a superhero creates that level of damage when having their final showdown in the respective origin story movie. However, the creative decision to showcase this as an introduction to Batfleck along with a multitude of other characters allows Batfleck to have that perspective and actually be in the right whether you agree with him or not. The biggest problem with Batfleck, and probably the biggest thing you need to take away from Batman v Superman, is that the massive turnaround in Bruce's personality still feels incredibly disingenuous all these years later. A full 3-hour movie filled with Superman feeling some type of way about Batman and vice versa ultimately ends with both characters colliding only for them to stop fighting because their mothers share the same name. Martha. I wish I was lying, but yes, that is the truth. Batman v Superman ends with the two teaming up to save the world because it's revealed to Bruce that Superman's mother's name is Martha, and since he's still struggling with his trauma all those years later, he had an understandable or believable soft spot for anything relating to his parents in such a heated moment. That's not to say that other things such as his amazing relationship with Alfred, who's played by Jeremy Irons, are irrelevant. That dynamic does play a fairly big role in Bruce having to learn from his ways and grow as a person and hero. However, it's Superman's truce that impacts Bruce the most. Their plan to save the world ultimately ends in a way that Bruce and Lois didn't want. Superman saving the world by sacrificing himself. The death of Superman actually makes Bruce want to be a better person and hero. He no longer has that inner rage in him. Superman's death leaves him in a somber yet stoic state of mind as shown by what he tells Wonder Woman in the final moments of Batman v Superman. I failed him in life. I won't fail him in death. Help me find the others like you. To which Diana responds, perhaps they don't want to be found. Bruce ends the movie telling us and telling Diana, they will, and they'll fight. We have to stand together. That brings us to the final and most important movie of them all, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League is the movie that gives Ezra Miller the most screen time as the Flash. It's also the only movie that truly gives us an idea as to what type of character Ezra's Flash is. Ezra's Barry Allen is a very naive, awkward, childlike, but lighthearted character. His personality essentially brings the youth out of the Justice League throughout this movie. Despite us knowing that Barry already has powers, obviously we get a glimpse of Barry's powers when he first lays his eyes on Iris West, who almost gets into a car crash but is saved by Barry. Ezra's Barry is also recruited by Batfleck as one of the first members of the Justice League after Batfleck forces Barry into confirming that he has superpowers as shown by the footage he had in Batman v Superman. Unfortunately though, Barry spends the majority of the movie trying to leap over his lack of confidence when it comes to using his powers, considering he has very little experience as a superhero at all. In fact, he spends more time grabbing people and putting them into safe locations or pushing things in place like Wonder Woman's sword when they first encountered Steppenwolf, the main villain of the movie, as a team than anything else. Barry basically doesn't fight at all in Zack Snyder's Justice League, he just runs, and boy, does he run a lot in this movie. In regard to Batfleck, after Superman's sacrifice in BVS, Batman realizes that a world-ending threat is coming. To save the world, Batfleck decides it's time to put together a superhero team. Aquaman, at first, is hesitant to join this team. Wonder Woman, on the other hand, finds out about this world-ending threat before she even speaks to Bruce thanks to a warning sign from the Amazonian warriors in the Themyscira. Naturally, she agrees to work with Bruce and goes off to get Cyborg while Bruce recruits Barry Allen as mentioned before. After the four of them agree to work together, they try to confront Steppenwolf and nearly fail, but Aquaman comes to save the day due to Steppenwolf attacking his people in Atlantis to get something called the Mother Box. For context, when Darkseid, Steppenwolf's leader, first came to Earth, he failed to conquer it thanks to the Earth's defenders. The Earth's defenders included Amazons, Atlanteans, humans, and Guardians from the Stars. After defeating Darkseid, the Earth's defenders hid 3 Mother Boxes in case they ever tried to call out to Planet Apokolips, the home of Darkseid. After Aquaman saves everybody, Batfleck's effort to assemble a superhero team pays off as the Justice League is formed. In their first meeting as a team, everybody agrees that to save the world, they have to revive Superman. Superman gets revived and eventually comes to his senses later on, while the Justice League go confront Steppenwolf as they need to save the world. It takes a bit, but as Superman naturally does, he comes to assist the Justice League just in time, but that's not enough because Cyborg isn't able to handle separating the 3 Mother Boxes from each other. This brings us to the heart of this iteration of the Justice League, Ezra Miller's Barry Allen. When all hope is lost, Barry manages to use his internal motivation of making his father proud and the entire world lying on his shoulders to reverse the timeline in what's probably one of the best moments we've ever seen in a superhero film. Yes, it's seriously that good emotionally and visually, the whole moment is phenomenal and is arguably just a tier below the Avengers assembling an Endgame and Miles' leap of faith in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Barry reverses the timeline, saves the world, and manages to actually be the hero the Justice League needed all along. The world never needed Barry to fight, they just needed him to run. Everybody in the Justice League gets a happy ending. Since we're here to mainly talk about everything related to the Flash, Barry gets the happy ending of making his dad proud by finally getting a job at Star Labs. Batfleck gets the happy ending after the world is saved as well. He bought a massive building where he establishes a big round table for the Justice League and also bought the bank trying to sell Clark's house. Whether The Flash addresses where Batfleck's story left off in Zack Snyder's Justice League remains to be seen, but here's where we're at with these 3 characters. Michael Keaton's Batman rode off into the sunset to seemingly be dormant for yet another long period of time. Ben Affleck's Batman likely went on to live his life until the next world-ending threat came his way and is seemingly still an influential figure in Barry Allen's life. Barry Allen, on the other hand, got a happy ending in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it's clear things went wrong. From the Flash's trailers, it's clear that Barry deeply misses his mother, which of course leads us to where we're at with the Flash. A massive Flashpoint story is on the way. 4 movies recapped and 3 character summaries later, you're officially ready for DC's The Flash. Now run, viewer, run.